In my experience working with clients, I've come to find that there are common regrets that people have after retiring. And these aren't necessarily the things you might originally think about. Now, with these regrets comes a sense of dissatisfaction and a desire to go back and do things all over again. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you the 5 things you'll wish you knew before you retired so you can avoid these regrets and create the retirement you dream about. Hey everybody, I'm James Knoll, founder of Root Financial, and I'm here to teach you how to get the most out of life with your money. So often when we think about retirement planning, we're thinking about the financial side. How much do I need in my 401k? When should I collect Social Security? What's the best healthcare option for myself and my spouse going into retirement? Now, these are all very important things to ask, but if we're not talking about the other side of retirement, then we're going to create a lot of regrets. We're going to be unprepared for what's actually ahead of us. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you the things I've heard clients say over and over and over again they regret after retirement, so that you, watching this video today, can make sure you plan for and address these things in your own retirement planning. The first regret that people have after they retire is they'll tell me they wish they traveled more before they retired. Now here's what we need to understand. We have 3 scarce resources that we're constantly trying to balance over the course of our lifetimes. These resources are our wealth, our time, and our health. Now once you retire, you will have your wealth and you'll have more time, but you might not necessarily have your health, at least to the same extent that you had prior to retirement. So in those years leading up to retirement, when you're dreaming about the trips to Europe or the tropical vacations or the cruise that you want to take, whatever it might be, don't wait until retirement to start doing some of those things. So often people build out this bucket list of all these trips they want to take, but it's not going to happen until after they retire. So they hit 65 or 67 or 70 or whenever they retire, and what they realize is, going back to those 3 scarce resources, they no longer have their health or even the time to do all those things before their health really starts to deteriorate. So what they'll tell me is, they'll say, James, I know that we didn't have as much time in our working years, but how could we have used our PTO? How could we have used more vacation time to do some of these things? Do them even with some family we maybe won't have a chance to do it with as we get older. How do we do these things when we have our health, when we have our energy? And that's a common regret I'll hear. So as you're watching this and thinking about some trips you want to do or things you want to do after you retire, which of those can you start doing today? Sometimes we push things into retirement just because it's easier to think about it that way. Of, oh, I'll get to that in retirement. Of, oh, this would be an amazing trip. I'll do it when I retire. Well, what's stopping you from doing it today? Now, sometimes there are financial constraints, and there are certainly also time constraints. But look at the list of the things that you want to do, and don't think of life as pre-retirement and post-retirement, but think of it as one integrated whole. How can you use your time, your wealth, your health now, and also use it in the future, but be very intentional about some of the things that you want to do? Begin doing those instead of just pushing them off to a later date and deferring them entirely until retirement. The second regret that people have, and this is a big one, is they'll tell me, James, I wish I had something to retire to. Now, when you think of retirement planning as a spreadsheet problem, all you think about is, how much do I need to save? How much do I need to invest? How big does my portfolio need to be? How can I maximize my income? And when you think about things in those terms, it's easy because you can solve the equation. You can solve for how much you need to save. You can solve for how long you need to work. You can solve for when you should collect Social Security. But the problem with life is it's not a spreadsheet. You can't solve for a fulfilling retirement. You can't solve for happiness and contentment in retirement by using a spreadsheet. So when we get so focused on rerunning more analyses and more spreadsheet projections and more of the financial side, we lose sight of the fact that retirement's not just a numbers game. We're not just retiring from our previous jobs, we need to be retiring to something. Now, what does that something need to be? Completely up to you. It could be travel, it could be volunteering, it could be time with friends and family, it could be a new workout routine, it could be anything that's gonna bring you joy and fulfillment and purpose, but that's gonna be unique to you. So as you're thinking about retirement, yes, do the planning and the projections and make sure you're squared away there. But don't forget the more important part, which is you could have all the money in the world, but if you have nothing to retire to, it's not gonna bring you joy and contentment. So how can you think about, what do I want retirement to look like? Blank canvas. What do I want to do Monday morning? What do I want to do with my days? What do I want to do when every day feels like a weekend? Start there. Because ultimately the goal of the finances is to support that. How can we use our investments and savings and resources to create this retirement we dream about? But it starts with having something to retire to. So what people will regret is they'll say, James, I plan to retire from something, which was my job, and I did a very good job of planning to retire from, but I didn't have something to retire to. So as you're watching, what is it that you're retiring to that excites you about being able to do that? Regret number 3 that people will tell me is they'll say, James, I wish I'd been more intentional about creating friends. Now, one benefit of work that sometimes we take for granted is the social interactions. Even if we're not necessarily best friends with everyone we work with, there is a degree of social connection. That social connection, whether we're extroverted or introverted, we all need some degree of it. So when you're at work, one of the things we often do is take for granted that that social interaction is healthy. Even if it's just a byproduct of your job, it's not the thing that you're there for, that social interaction that we have is beneficial to us as people. Now, when you retire, if you haven't been intentional about creating friendships or creating social connections outside the workplace, that can be a lonely feeling. So think about that ideally ahead of the time that you retire. What will you either do, number 1, to maintain the relationships with people you had from work, or number 2, create new relationships? This could be clubs that you join. This could be community centers that you take part in. This could be activities or people from church. So what are you going to do to foster those new relationships? Because it is important that when you retire, you're not just going to want to sit around all day doing nothing. If you don't have social interaction, and again, it doesn't need to be 24/7, but if you don't have a community of people that you have some degree of relationship with, studies show your health is going to start to decline. Your health is going to start to deteriorate, both your physical and your mental health. So that's an underrated aspect of what we get naturally through our working career, and it's something that we need to be really intentional about recreating once we're no longer working, but still having that interaction with people that we care about and can share some of our lives with. The 4th regret that people will tell me, the thing that they wish they knew before they retired, is they wish they had focused more on health and wellness prior to retiring. Now, it's so easy when you're in the tail end of your career saying, I'm so close to retirement, but I've got bills and I've got responsibilities and I have reports I need to deliver and I'm caring for family and I'm paying for a mortgage. Finding time for yourself can be difficult. So when you do that, it's often tempting to say, well, when I retire, then I'll get into my health routine. Then I'll start working out. Then I'll start playing pickleball or tennis or golf or whatever it is. But what you don't realize is the longer you wait to do that, the more your health begins to decline. And not only does your health decline, but that decline accelerates the older that we get. And once it's hit a certain point, it's really difficult to dig ourselves out of that. So don't wait until retirement. I'm not gonna say it's too late to focus on your health. It's never too late to focus on your health. But what you might find is all these things you dreamed about in retirement, the places you wanna travel to, the activities you wanna do, being able to pick up grandchildren and play with them in the park, you might be very limited if you fully neglect your health leading up to retirement. And the worst thing would be to retire and say, look at all the money and the resources I have to now do what I want to do, but then to be limited by your health. So you don't need to be working out 6-7 times a week leading up to retirement, but do something. Start building that habit. Is it going on a walk for 20 or 30 minutes in the morning? Is it swimming laps at the community pool 3 times a week? Is it getting into a pickleball league or maybe working out with a trainer 3 times a week? Whatever it is, make sure you're staying active. There are so many studies showing how detrimental it is to be sitting as long as we do and to not being active. That starts to compound. In the same way we look at investments compounding in a positive way, those negative effects of not being active, of not working out, those also compound, but in a very negative way. So make sure that you're focusing on your health before retirement so that when you do retire, not only do you have your time, not only do you have your wealth, but you also have your health so you're free to fully pursue what you want. And then finally, the 5th regret that people have before retirement is they'll say, James, I wish I had spoken with my partner before retirement. Now, whenever we're working with a client, we're having these conversations with both spouses if they're married. But a lot of times, people who go to retirement, maybe without a planner who's intentionally having these conversations with them, each spouse, if they're married, will subconsciously have their own idea of what they're expecting in retirement. And this is just normal. Why on earth would we expect for both spouses to think the same thing when for 40 years, they've maybe thought about this thing, they thought about retirement and what they want to do? That's not necessarily going to be a perfect overlap between each of the spouses. So you might have one spouse that can't wait for retirement because then it's time for home improvement projects, or we're going to remodel the bathroom, or we're going to redo the landscaping in the backyard, where the other spouse is saying, wait a minute, I thought we were going to focus on golf and travel and sailing and all these fun active things we want to do. Well, if you're not having those conversations, there's gonna be this contention going into retirement because all of a sudden these goals that you had, this vision that you painted for retirement, you're realizing that that wasn't shared with your partner and it creates conflict. So what can you do on this side of retirement before you actually go into that season of life to say, what do we want our retirement to look like? Because typically there is a decent amount of overlap, but it's about understanding expectations, about understanding what each spouse needs so that when you go into retirement, it can be one of the best seasons together that you have, but it starts with proper communication and making sure you're on the same page. So I hope that's helpful to see those 5 common regrets, because when you see what people who've gone ahead of you, what they regret looking backwards, we can use that information to our benefit. We can say, these are common regrets that people face. What can we now do to be intentional about this time? Now, one of the other things on a financial side that often gets in the way between where we are today and a successful retirement is this concept of enough. So I have a video right here that's on the screen, and what this video talks about is, when do we know that we have enough? Maybe we've understood these 5 regrets and we're really good and really intentional about addressing them, but at what point do we have enough to actually retire? Well, check out this video here, because in that video, I'll walk you through a simple framework that you can apply that will help you understand when you have enough. Once again, I'm James Knoll, founder of Root Financial, and if you're interested in seeing how we help our clients at Root Financial get the most out of life with their money, be sure to visit us at www.rootfinancialpartners.com.